But hello to everyone that's joining us today. Good morning if you're joining us from here in Canada or the United States, but perhaps good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for taking the time today to join us and learn a little bit more about the IB programs that Western University offers and how these programs can benefit you and possibly your career. I'm going to first introduce myself. My name is Courtney. I am the IB program coordinator here at Western. I am the face behind the emails that you've probably been sending to learn more about the program. I'm here to help answer any questions that you might have. I'm here to help you through the application process. I'm also the main contact during your time throughout the program as well. So really from start to finish, I am the person that you'll see and hopefully not get sick of throughout all of this time. I'm going to dive now into our agenda for today. First, we're going to hear from Dr. Glenn Odland and learn more about his career journey, and more of his insights on international education. Then we're going to discuss the two programs that we offer here at Western, go over the program overview, structure, and content. We will then talk about the application process. Now, our winter cohort is starting next month. The application deadline is quickly approaching, so we'll spend some time on that if you do have any questions there. We will then pass it back over to Dr. Glenn Odland, where he will discuss opportunities and current trends in the global market. And then at the end, we'll have time for a questions and answer period. So if you had burning questions that we didn't happen to answer throughout the presentation, you're more than welcome to ask them then as well. And we'll have lots of time for that at the end. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Glenn Odland, but first I just wanted to say thank you, Glenn, for taking time today out of your day to join our webinar and provide your valuable insights. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you, Courtney, and let me echo Courtney's welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking time to join us, whether it's live or in the recorded session. We thought it might be useful for me to give you just a bit of a snapshot of my experience and history with the IB, because it sets the context for the comments that I will offer you about your journey, whether it's a new start or whether it's something you already have begun. I began with the IB in 1999. I began as a DP Lang and Lit teacher. Ironically, went through the training, and then before I was able to start teaching, I was appointed into a principal role. So most of my experience with the IB has been in the leadership context. So I was the principal at a private school, high school principal at a private school in Canada for a number of years. From there, my wife and I moved to Singapore in 2006, where I took on the role of head of school of the Canadian International School. CIS Singapore is a continuum school, so PYP, MYP, and DP. A very vibrant community, fantastic life and leadership and professional experience, the 11 years that we spent there. During that time, I became trained as a workshop leader, really helped in the development of a leadership suite of workshops, and that's what I was primarily engaged in delivering, that and governance workshops, so mostly focused on leadership topics. In 2017, we had accumulated 4 grandchildren back here in Canada, so we repatriated back to Canada. I spent a year as the managing director of a group of schools in India, so sort of a month on, month off, a group of schools that wanted to open IB schools. A testament to how complicated and challenging it can be. It really didn't take off, and that's a reflection of sort of the timing and the circumstances, but certainly gave me a great deal of respect for that market and for that country and educators in that country. And then when we moved full-time back to Canada, I took on this role with Western University. So I now have 3 part-time roles, the first of which is serving as the academic program manager at Western University. That means I'm responsible for finding and supporting the instructors in our IBEC program, and then also just making sure that we are compliant with our expectations, the expectations of the IB, and also with Western University's very high expectations for any programs that we offer. I also do some consulting work directly with the IB in the Americas and working with universities in the Americas. And my third part-time role is with a group called the International School Services. And I do consulting work with them. So I have client schools in China and Macau. And I also do consulting work with a number of other schools in sort of a shorter term basis in Europe and Asia primarily. And I offer that to you because really It's a real passion area of mine, both IB and international education. And I think that what you're considering is a fantastic way to equip yourself for becoming really well qualified and very attractive and just a better educator and or leader. So next slide then, Courtney. I'm conscious of the fact that we have people who may know lots about the IB, and some of you may just be using this as your exploration into the IB. So I'm going to try and very quickly give you some snapshot understanding of the program. I choose this visual because I really like its symbolic value. The 4 colored circles are meant to represent the 4 programs in the IB. So there's the primary years program or PYP, middle years program, diploma program, or career related program. And you notice that there's no text in those 4 circles because all of the programs are meant to embody the text, the ideas, the philosophy and practices that are identified in that common core circle. So in all of the programs, you'll see that the IB learner profile is really crucial. The learners are at the center of everything that happens in the IB program. So when we're looking at things like multilingualism, intercultural understanding, the global engagement, all of that happens in all 4 programs. And one of the strengths of our approach to this is that whether it's in the teaching and learning or the leadership practices, you will come to understand the history of the IB, its very strong philosophical base, and then how that's lived out in practice. Next slide. One of the things that appeals very much to me and has kept me deeply involved in the IB for the 25 years almost that I've been involved in it is its sense of purpose. This is not the full-blown mission statement. Have a look on their website and you'll see that it's several paragraphs long. So we're using a version that they often use on their website to capture some of the key concepts about the IB. And the thing that I would reinforce here is that the IB is a very mission-driven organization. It is an organization that was founded to make a difference in the world. And everything about its programs, everything about what we do in schools is meant to help forward and advance that mission. And so in talking about the IB and thinking about your educational journey, whether it's teaching and learning or in leadership, you'd want to know what the purpose is. You'd want to make sure that there's a strong alignment, that it really resonates for you, because that's what helps to fuel the hard work that it is to make sure that these things come to life. Next slide. We'll touch more on this a little bit later when we get to the end of the workshop, the webinar, and explain sort of what some of the specifics of this look like. But just in terms of an overview, the IB program is something that has a global footprint, and it is in a stage of fairly rapid advancement. In fact, I need to update these slides because there are now 5,700 IB schools and 160 countries, and that's my not keeping up with the growth of this program. It is growing widely. And of course, in the second box there, what that means is in the thousands of schools around the world, they need IB trained teachers. And that's what you're considering is engaging in training that was going to equip you to be able to deliver an IB program. As much as that, the access to the IB network, whether or not you have landed a job in an IB school or not, taking the IBEC program gets you into that peer network, and you get access to resources that are compiled, and they're really fantastic, both teaching and learning resources and leadership resources, and you become a member of a community. And that, of course, is going to give you a huge advantage. You're going to become a better teacher or a better leader because of that. And clearly, it gives you that competitive advantage that we've talked about a bit. And it's not that you do it just for that, but I think it is important to recognize that this is a very highly valued qualification. Next slide. So who should take this program? Well, let me go back to the notion of the mandate for the IB. Make sure that what the IB wants to achieve in the world and through its teaching and learning and leadership practices and work with students and families, that has a real appeal to you. And so it's about teaching and leading internationally, but even domestically within your own country, but with an international point of view. And that's where the global mindedness, the idea of critical thinking comes in. And that needs to be something that matters to you. That needs to be something that you are already trying to do, and what you're looking for is a better way to do it, or a way to do it with other like-minded educators and leaders. Clearly, it's something that will expand your credentials, and to be ambitious about whether different schools you want to teach in or schools that you want to lead. That certainly is a very appropriate reason to be looking at this. And having those specific professional goals, absolutely. Make sure that you know why it is you're doing this, because it is hard work. And I think whenever you engage in something that's demanding, you want to make sure that it is something that matters to you and that you have a reason for doing it. And then, of course, it is about building that worldwide network of colleagues. That is going to make all of us better for having colleagues around the world. Next slide.
Okay, I'll take it from here and talk a little bit more about our program structure. So we do offer 2 certificates here at Western. We offer the certificate in teaching and learning and the certificate in leadership practice, but both of these certificates do have a very similar program structure. So both of our programs are 100% online, and they only take 6 months to complete. The program is comprised of 4 consecutive modules, or 4 courses that you'll be taking throughout your time in the certificate program. Each module is 5 weeks in length, and there is a scheduled 2-week break in between the start of each module. And this is just to allow time for instructors to set up the content and get prepared for the next module, the next course you'll be taking. In total, the entire program will be completed within that scheduled 26-week time frame. We do have many educators and our instructors from around the world who are taking our program, instructing our program. Coursework is completed asynchronously within the weekly schedule that is identified by your instructor. And this allows for flexibility for you to complete the program at a time that suits your schedule best. Now, there are opportunities in the program for synchronous sessions, but of course, because we have so many people from around the world taking the program, the synchronous sessions aren't mandatory, but the opportunity is there for you as well. So going into the first certificate, the IB Certificate in Teaching and Learning, this certificate is for candidates that are looking to teach in an IB World School. It will allow you to be able to step right into the classroom and be confident in teaching IB curriculum. The certificate leads to qualifications to teach a specific IB subject area or level, and I'm going to go over each of those levels and subject areas in the next slides. We offer the 3 levels, which you would have heard Glenn talk about earlier. We offer the primary years program, which is PYP. This certifies you to teach ages 3 to 12. It is inquiry-based, and the framework is really about students as agents of their own learning. We then offer the middle years program, MYP, which certifies you to teach ages 11 to 16, and the diploma program, DP, certifying you to teach ages 16 to 19. Both the MYP and the DP programs are subject area specific. So you will be selecting a specific subject to specialize in, and they are about making practical connections between studies and the real world. So these are the different subject areas that you can select within the 3 levels that we offer. Now, in the primary years program, upon successful completion of this program, your certificate will say that you are certified in kindergarten to grade 5, the K to G5 area. We just ask you to select either kindergarten to grade 2 or grade 3 to grade 5, just to specialize a little bit further, and mostly for cohort groupings. We tend to have very large groups in the PYP area, so that's more so for us just to group you. In the MYP and the DP, though, you will be selecting a specific subject to select. So MYP, we offer mathematics, science, individuals, and society. And individuals and society is really like a social studies. It has a bit of history, a bit of geography, and a little bit of economics. And we also offer English language and literature. And then in our diploma program, we offer biology, chemistry, mathematics, English language and literature, history, business, and economics. So whatever level the PYP, MYP, DP, and subject area you become certified in will be the qualifications you're able to teach. So if you're selecting DP biology at the end of the program, you'll be certified in DP biology, and that's what your certificate will say. A question that I do get quite often is, say I take DP biology here in this program, can I then go on to teach, say, MYP history? And the answer to that is typically no, and that's because you're certified in DP biology. However, you can take an additional subject later at a different time. So if you did want to take MYP history, you can take that later on. So the program structure for our teaching and learning certificate, there's 4 modules that I had mentioned. Module 1 is mixed grouping or all cohorts, and that just means that you'll be in a cohort of about 25 with fellow peers and colleagues in the PYP, MYP, and DP. You'll be all mixed together. This module is an overview of the IB philosophy and the mission and how these are reflected in each of the 3 programs. Module 2 is teaching and learning. This is where you'll then split into your chosen subject specialization, and you'll look at the teaching and learning in your specific subject area. Module 3 is assessment, evaluation, and impactful student feedback. You'll continue on with your same subject specialization group from Module 2, and you're going to look at the assessment within your subject. Module 4 is where you'll then come back together with the same group you were in Module 1, the mixed grouping, and it's the professional learning networks. And this is where you're going to learn about becoming a reflective practitioner within your own classroom. And here are a couple of assessment examples that you'll be doing throughout your time in the program, not these exact ones, of course. I've just taken them as an example for you. I do get a lot of questions about if there's any exams, tests, what you'll be doing in the program. And I will say that there are no exams, there are no tests. You'll be doing different readings, assessments and assignments, forum posts, group work, that sort of stuff. Because this is a professional certificate, we want the work that you do in the program to be very practical in nature, where you can take it directly into the classroom upon completion of the program for use. So for example, some of the assessments that have been done in the program before: produce a mini unit plan for a week's worth of lessons for one of the topics you sketched out in your curriculum map. Example 2 is, how would you go about explaining the DP history assessment to students and parents? Produce either a PowerPoint presentation or a full-page handbook entry designed to be shared with students and parents. So again, hopefully you can take this PowerPoint presentation or handbook that you've created and take it right into, say, your DP history classroom, sharing it with your students and parents. I'm going to hand it over for Glenn to talk a little bit more about the leadership practice certificate.
Great, thanks, Courtney. A couple of key differences between the teaching and learning certificate and the leadership practice certificate. One of them is that in the teaching and learning, in those middle modules 2 and 3, you will focus in on a specific program, and if it's an MYP or DP, on a specific subject within that program. Whereas the leadership practice is meant to be leadership within any level, or in fact, throughout the program, you'll talk about all 4 of the programs and what leadership would look like in the different ones. The other thing is that the teaching and learning certificate can be taken as a pre-service teacher. So in other words, you can take that while you are engaged in your completing a Bachelor of Education, for example. Whereas the leadership practice, you have to have had a minimum of 3 years in a school. It doesn't have to be an IB school, but you do have to have begun your teaching journey so that you're aware of what some of the issues are. It makes you better equipped to be able to address some of the tasks that you'll have to do within that. So then really it looks at teachers. You may already be in a leadership role, or you may not be. You may already be in an IB school, or you may not be. But it's really to equip you for leadership in an IB context. And so clearly it has a lot to do with what the IB expectations are about leadership. But in essence, and one of the things we'll talk about is its applicability, even if you're not in an IB school. It's about good leadership. Next slide. And one of the things that I love about it is that it is very clearly tied to good research about what leadership looks like. So while the application for it is in an IB context, and clearly it's meant to make sure that we're supporting good learning as defined by the IB and within the IB curricular kind of framework, it really is about just how do you lead well in schools, and it's based on research. I was part of a group many years ago that helped to develop the leadership suite of workshops. And I loved the back and forth about when we were sort of teasing out what would we focus on and what mattered, and we really wanted to make sure that it had both applicability within IB and elsewhere. And you'll see when you look at these different capabilities, just how rounded they are. The other thing I love about it is that they're framed as capabilities. And there's often a debate about whether or not leadership is just innate. Are you born a good leader, or can you become a good leader? And I fall solidly in the camp that while you should leverage your natural abilities, and all of us do that in our own way, anyone who really wants to can become a good leader if they're focused on it, if they look at how to leverage their strengths and offset some of those things that they don't do as naturally, but their capabilities, and you can develop them. And good leaders can become better leaders. So it has a really strong kind of growth mindset underpinning it. Next slide. So in the same way as the teaching and learning, it has 4 modules. They're the same length. They're 5 weeks each, two weeks in between each one. And they look at this progression of leadership, and obviously within the IB context. So you're introduced to the philosophy, the origins of each of the 4 programs, how they work well together. Then clearly an important part of your leadership is how you can be a strong instructional leader. You need to understand what that means. What does inquiry-based learning look like? What is concept-based learning? All of the things that are key to good learning. Then it's about you're leading your communities in that 3rd module. How do you make sure that you are creating the conditions under which really good work can be done on the part of your colleagues as teachers and the students and families? And then finally, it's about, in a very IB sense, how does your leadership help to spread beyond the walls of your school? I think one of the risks of international schools is they become very insular, and they focus on just what they're doing within the school walls. And while that's hugely important and very time-consuming, that shouldn't be where it stops. So we're really keen to make sure that we're living out that part of the IB mandate, which is make a difference in your world. Next slide. And in the same fashion with the teaching and learning, we really want you to be engaged in practical, in the best of the features of the assessment are really to just give you a way to apply what you're learning in principles. What are the principles of good leadership? Well, we'll give you a case study, for example, where you need to think through how you might respond to a certain situation, or think about a specific part of your school's program, like a service learning. How are you going to make that a better program within your school? So they really are taken from real life examples. Our instructors are practicing leaders in IB schools around the world. One of the key strengths that I can't remember where we'll cover this, but you'll be mentored by a practicing head of school or a senior leader in an IB school in your first module. It's a big part of that whole first module. So it really is about how do you roll up your sleeves and think about and apply and start practicing leadership principles in a very practical fashion. Next slide. Yeah, so here's some unique aspects of the way we deliver it. The notion of the diverse cohorts, let me speak to the fact that this is a fully online program. And I would hasten to mention that we designed it specifically that way pre-COVID. So we did this in 2018, we were shaping it, we were recognized in 2019. So this was before COVID, that we intentionally designed this as an online program because we wanted to be able to recruit interested members from all over the world. And so you will be in a cohort, you'll study all 4 modules with the same group, but they will be from all over the world, lots of different viewpoints and experiences, and that really honors kind of what an IB community is meant to look like. As I mentioned already, our instructors are members of the IB Educators Network. They are trained and qualified specifically by the IB. They are IB leaders, and they're typically in those senior leadership positions, and they've got tons of experience. It's one of the great strengths of this program is that the people that you will be working with as your instructors. And then I mentioned the mentoring connection. And in the feedback we get from our graduates from the leadership program, this is one of the things that they value the most. And I have the great joy of ongoing relationship with a number of people that I got to know through the program, and can see how they're growing as leaders. And the impact of the program is certainly meant to outlive just the 20 weeks of instruction. It's meant to start relationships that last a lot longer. Next slide. And this applies to both the teaching and learning and the leadership practices programs, is that you're given access to what's called the PRC, the Program Resource Center. And this is an absolute goldmine of resources, both program specific and then in terms of cross-program resources or continuum resources. And as certainly while you're in the program, and then after you graduate from the program, you will have access to certain levels of these resources, because Again, it's a community, a global community, where what we're seeking to do is to make all of us better because we share, because we ask good questions, because we engage in dialogue.
Somebody took the
And
stool.
your membership in the PRC is or your access to the PRC is one of those really crucial elements of your the resource base that you will have. Next slide.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the application details and what's required within your application. In terms of requirements or eligibility into the program, we do require that you have a bachelor's degree from an accredited university. We also want to see that you have a recognized teaching program or 3 years of full-time teaching experience in the K-12 setting. So a recognized teaching program is anything that's provided you the qualifications to be able to teach. So what I will say is this program is not providing you with those credentials to teach. It's a professional qualification that's to enhance your already existing teaching credentials. So an example of recognized teaching program could be your Bachelor of Education degree, Master's in Education, your PGC,
PGCE, Postgraduate Certificate in Education.
Perfect, thank you. Or anything of that sort of nature, which is providing you those qualifications. If you don't have something specific like that, we will look at applicants that have 3 years of full-time teaching experience in that K-12 setting. In terms of hours, you can expect to devote about 8 to 10 hours per week to this program. And that's on different readings, assignments, forum posts, group work, all of the things that I sort of touched upon earlier in that assessments slide. So there is the ability to maintain full-time employment or full-time studies while taking this program. I would say most of the people in the program are working full-time or currently in school full-time. Tuition for the program is $3,500 Canadian. We do allow you to pay in either one lump sum before the program starts, or you do have the option to pay in installments. That'd be 4 equal installments of $875. I will also note that once you successfully complete the program, there is a registration fee, which is paid directly to the IB for your certification and registration. That is a fee of $295 US. And our applications are currently open for our January cohort. The program starts on January 29th, and the application deadline is January 5th. So it is quickly approaching. We do offer cohorts in both January and September. So if you're looking to join sooner than later, January is fast approaching. I will say our application portal, our application process is not too intensive. We're going to ask you to fill out, of course, your name, your information, your work history, your education. And then we're going to ask you to upload specific documents. Those documents being number one, we want to see your transcripts from your bachelor's degree. Those do not have to be official transcripts. They can be unofficial transcripts, a screenshot of your student portal. But we do want to see those transcripts. We're then going to ask to see proof of your teaching degree, whether that's a diploma or degree or something, your teaching license, something to prove that you have those teaching qualifications. If you don't have that and you have the 3 years of full-time teaching experience, we do want to see a letter from an employer, of course, written on company letterhead, just outlining your role, how long you have been there. Yeah, if you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out. And then if English isn't your first language, you'll just have to upload an English proficiency test. We do accept the IELTS, the TOEFL, or the Duolingo as well. Duolingo is fully online if that's easier. If English is not your first language, you do have the ability to be exempt if you've taught, if you've studied in an academic setting in Canada or in a school that's main form of instruction was English. So if you do have questions about being exempt, you can also reach out to me as well. But really, those are the documents that we require. Last but not least is just a resume. And that doesn't have to be a resume specifically for our program, just any resume that you're currently using. So those are the 4 documents. It shouldn't take you too long. Gathering the documents tends to be the longest part of the application process. You can apply on our website. I have the link here. Don't worry about writing it down. I will send out the slides. Like I said, the deadline is January 5th. And if you do have any questions about the application process or concerns, feel free to reach out to me directly at ibwestern@uwo.ca. Okay.
Thanks, Courtney. So this last section is really meant to be kind of a practical look at the setting in which we're operating as educators. And I'm conscious of the fact that there are people who are subscribing to this or have joined us from all over the world and are in different contexts. So I'll try and touch on a number of different kinds of features of this, but really I think COVID is certainly something that affected all of us and around the entire world. And in terms of its evolving landscape, some of the things that you're probably already aware of are the return to in-person events, like conferences have returned to in-person events. Recruitment fairs now host actual in-person recruitment fairs. We've returned to travel on both a personal and professional level. So the mobility that typifies the international school landscape is certainly, we're returning to that. And certainly I've noticed that my work is no longer all done, from my home office via Zoom. I now go out and visit my client schools, and I'm getting out into schools, and I love that about it. Something else that's worth noting, I think, that just came out recently, you may be familiar with the OECD's every 3 years, they do a set of tests of 15-year-olds around the world. It's called the PISA tests. And what the most recent results on the PISA tests confirm what many of us in the educational space have been concerned about. And that is that during COVID, there was a great deal of slippage. And what we're seeing globally is that students have lost some ground in their progress because of all of the interruptions and it's not that online learning can't be very powerful, but there were all these challenges that went along with it, and uncontrolled variables, and some schools did it better than others. And I think you will see, in terms of the change in education, is that there's going to be a great deal of concern and focus on not losing the roundedness of our programs, but making sure that we try and do what we can to catch up for the lost ground. So that's something that just keep in mind in terms of the focus of schools and the leaders who are recruiting for those schools. In a moment, I'm going to take you to a slide to show you a little bit about sort of where international schools tend to be the most dominant, where there are the most of them, and that has a bearing on you if what you're looking for is to move into an international school or to move to a different one, and sort of navigating those opportunities. I think we say this all the time, but it's time to live it out. In the midst of any challenge, there are always opportunities, and that certainly is the case for us during COVID and now as we're navigating out of COVID. What does good hybrid learning look like? What did we learn when we were in an online phase that we can carry forward into our future practices? So there's lots of things about the world that we're in that has lots of opportunities. And hopefully, as you reflect on them in your own teaching and or leadership practices, you're already sort of thinking about how you can be better for having lived through the COVID experience. Next slide. This graph is taken from a group called ISC Research. You might be familiar with them, and they are really good at collecting data from schools around the world, and then they consolidate it and come up with these really quite powerful reports. And this one's taken from one that they've just recently done about international schools, where they are, what their growth looks like, what they're focusing on. And it's really kind of a macro level look at the evolution of that space in education. And I share this with you now because this is a really significant kind of a variable when you're looking at, well, I'd like to become a teacher and you sort of fill in the blank. Where does that look like? So you'll note that, not surprisingly, over half of all of the international schools in the world are in the Asia region. Now, that's a big space, a big region, and it's broken down, that little smaller bubble onto the right sort of breaks down where they are. And again, you'll have access to this. You can look at this, or you can also just look up ISC Research and see what kinds of additional data they have. But this informs a little bit about where the most opportunities are going to be. This data is not just IB schools, but IB schools comprise one of really the main programs in English language schools around the world. You'd be familiar with the fact that Cambridge is also quite popular in parts of the world. And then if it's an American program, that may be offering the advanced placement, for example. But IB is strong and growing. And the other part that I would mention is that I hope you're picking up on this message that our primary focus is to equip you for either teaching or leading in an IB school, but what you learn will be applicable in any good school. And so these data apply for whether or not you're actually going into an IB school right away, or whether you may have a placement in another school. Next slide. So here's a summary of what you might think of as either FAQ or just some of the most sort of global questions that you might have. And then when I'm finished with this, then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions. But let me just work my way through this. And again, one of the reasons I introduced myself in as much detail as I did is I'm giving you these answers that I'm giving you come from one person who has the experiences of being a head of school, managing director, leadership workshop, and been in the IB for many years. But it's one person's opinion, so take it as that. And that first bullet point, how can you increase your chances? I mean, you're already taking steps towards that with engaging in this kind of a professional qualification, whether it's teaching and learning or leadership practices. That clearly is a really important step in terms of making you a more attractive hire. I'd step back from that and say, and this will flavor a lot of my answers in some of the other answers to the questions, but first and foremost is that you need to focus on what you're doing right now. It's really important to be future focused and to have a plan for where you want to go in your future. What's most important is that you do the absolute best you can in whatever domain you're in, because that's what's going to show what you're capable of. It's going to show your commitment levels. And that's always the very attractive thing, again, for me as a person when I was doing hiring. We get from people who are not in Canada already, we get often the question, how can I become an IB teacher in Canada? And I think I need to be really clear about the fact that there are two significant kind of qualification or government requirements that need to be met. The first one has to do with being recognized or certified as a teacher. And so your teacher training program would matter. In the Canadian context, education is regulated at the provincial level. So each province has its own set of criteria, its own process that you go through, an application that you'd have to engage in. And being qualified to teach in Saskatchewan doesn't mean you can teach in Ontario. You have to go through the same thing. So it's a bit annoying on that level, but it is something you would have to look at. You would have to become a qualified teacher in the province that you're applying for. That's one level. And then a second level is kind of on a national level. It just has to do with work visas. If you don't already have something that would allow you a permanent resident visa or something like that, then you have to satisfy the Government of Canada. And again, going to the Government of Canada website will give you a sense of what those visa requirements might look like. Both of those things are the starting point. Then you get to applying to a specific employer, whether it's a school board or a private school in a specific school. That's when the IB qualifications will matter. What you're doing with an IBEC program isn't going to make a difference in the teacher qualification, the ministry education, or the visa, but it will make a difference to your future employer. So I hope that that's kind of a clear sort of picture of the steps you have to take. Not impossible, but it does require a really focused energy and time to meet those requirements. What kinds of candidates stood out in the interview process? And I will share with you that over the 11 years, we were in a growth mode, and in some years I hired 50 plus teachers, so that's hundreds of interviews. And so this is coming from my experiences in terms of what kinds of candidates really made me stop and think a little bit about it. It had to do, first of all, with the authenticity of what I sensed out of the candidate. So be really careful to make sure that you are reflecting who you are, what matters to you, what you have chosen to do with those whether it's volunteer opportunities or how you chose to focus on your teaching practices or your leadership practices. Make sure that you are being true to what really matters to you, because that will show in an interview. The other thing that I'll touch on, it will be a little bit in one of the subsequent bullet points, is that know something about the school that you're applying to. Do some research, looking on their website, finding out what you can about sort of what matters there, so that you can, and here's something that's really important, develop a question or two that shows that you want to find out more, that shows that you've done your homework, that shows that it matters to you the kind of school that you're going to. It's really important to have a strong match. I deeply believe that the best marriages, if you can use that analogy, are ones where both parties go into with eyes wide open, where both parties look for something that matters to them. And when it aligns, it's going to be a really fantastic experience. It won't be perfect. No school is perfect and no candidate is perfect. But if you've taken the time to make sure that on the really big ticket items, there's an alignment, philosophical and practical, then that's going to be certainly, that's what I was looking for. And that's what I think will make it a good experience for you as well. You may be familiar with the IB workshop model, and they are both, they're probably predominantly in-person models, but they also do them online. They're typically sort of a 2.5-day time frame. And I'm a workshop leader, so of course I believe in the merits of that. And there are some advantages to all being in one room for 2.5 days. It's an intensive experience, it's a personal experience. So yeah, there's some things that are hard to replicate in the online setting. But the IB Educator Certificate Program has a level of depth that an IB workshop simply cannot achieve over 2.5 days. So over the span of those 20 weeks, you have a chance to be exposed to ideas, to reflect on them, to work your way through them. You will actually submit coursework, you will submit assignments and projects that help us to make sure that you have deeply understood that. So as somebody hiring, when I look at the two, I'm looking at somebody who's completed an IB Educator Certificate or a workshop. The IBEC qualification is a much more firm confirmation to me that you really do grasp this, that you have been able to demonstrate your understanding in really tangible ways. For me, it's just hands down a much more rounded, deep kind of understanding of this. Of course it should be, it's much longer. And so it's an investment that you're making that will pay dividends and have a real strong appeal when you're looking at the sort of the interview setting. The advice about if you're interested in applying to an international school is, I mean, I'm coming at this from somebody who had just the most powerful, both personal and professional experiences. So I would say absolutely, but it comes with a caveat. It needs to be something that works for you. It needs to be something that's really well informed. So you need to have thought it through. You need to think about what this would look like. If you're relocating, if you're a single person, you don't have a family that you're taking with you, there are some things that make it easier, but that doesn't mean that families can't do it. Even if you've got dependent children who are moving with you, I believe that that's one of the greatest gifts that you can offer to a child is that third culture kid experience, that TCK experience. So don't shy away from it. If more complicated, certainly. It takes more work, yes. More benefits, that too. Make sure that you're doing it from a really thoughtful, well-informed perspective. And that last question about the recruitment agency is they can help with that process. You will know if you've joined a reputable recruitment agency, you will know that the schools that are in that pool are schools that you can trust. It doesn't mean they're all going to be good alignment with you, but it means that they've passed a threshold of legitimacy, and they're not a school that is going to necessarily renege on a contract, for example. So joining a recruitment agency is a really good idea. Use them well. If you have a consultant who's helping you, make sure that you're being really honest with them about what you're looking for, and they'll help you find a school or a set of schools. When you are looking for an international school, I would caution you not to get too fixated on one specific school and say, oh, I have to get to International School of Beijing or something like that. Yeah, great school, great setting, but it's one school, and guess what? If it's an awesome school, there's going to be hundreds of people applying for there. So it's not that you won't get it, but it's just that you limit the scope of possibilities. Look first for the kind of school that you want to get to. Is it a school that has a focus on integrating technology or a STEM program, or they got a great arts program, or they do focus on service learning? What matters to you? And find schools that have similar kinds of focus, because not every school in the world does the same thing or focuses its energies in the same way. Find one that really appeals to you, because when you join it, you're going to be working really hard on that kind of institutional goal. So find schools that work for you and then start applying. Try not to get too fixated on, oh, I have to live in France and only that market works for me. Well, if that's the only way it can be, because maybe you've got family there or something. Okay, I get that. But you do limit your opportunities in terms of discovering something about a new part of the world. I couldn't have found Singapore on a map if I tried before I was started looking at the school there, and it turned into one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. So just stay open-minded about the whole process. Okay, I think I've gone on long enough, and we want to make sure that we have time for questions. So I don't know if there are any in our chat. While I'm talking, I can't read at the same time. So I don't know, Courtney, if there's anything there, or any of you can just unmute yourself and ask questions. Either of those two is fine.
Yeah, we do have one in the chat, Glenn. It says, can we enroll in the IB Leadership Program having PE qualification and sports administration experience of 10 years without school teaching experience?
If you've worked in a school, I'm just calling it up. No, you can't. You really, and here's why. As a leader in an IB school, you will have a number of responsibilities, and certainly what you've been involved in would be a big part of it. That whole, and it's often referred to as health and physical education. So it's a big sort of rounded picture about how we help our students to become more just better people and better learners. But you do have to have instructional leadership. Sorry, you have to have instructional experience because you are the primary instructional leader. So you do have to have worked in a school setting. You don't have to have taught all those subjects, but you have to have lived and worked in a school setting in order for you to be qualified for it. You'll find it virtually impossible to engage deeply in the coursework. And the two metrics that we use, obviously we have specific entrance criteria, but the two kind of key questions that we ask ourselves when we're reviewing applications is, will this student be successful? Are they equipped to be successful in this program? And then the second thing is, what will this look like for both the instructor and that person's colleagues? So you're put into group work and you're doing things that are collaborative. It's making sure that it's going to be a positive, productive, successful experience for everyone involved. And I can just tell you that in the leadership practices, when you have to have lived in the school for a period of time if you're going to be successful and it's going to be meaningful for you.
If you have any other questions, feel free to unmute yourselves and just ask away. We have some time for that.
So I have a question, if I can ask, please.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the question is, I made an application and I got a mail day for yesterday from you. I think it says that you need an unofficial transcript from my undergraduate degree. But then I already have my bachelor's of education. I did upload the mark sheet and degree certificate of my bachelor's of education. So I actually do not understand what is an official transcript you're looking for.
Oh, okay. You had your grades, like the transcript of grades for your Bachelor of Education degree?
So I'm not so sure about the transcripts now, but what I got from my university was directly the mark sheets and then the degree certificate. That's it after my program.
Send me an email after and we'll go over the documents that you have and we can discuss what we're looking for. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
So Salia, I see your question about 8 years of experience as a member of the senior leadership team at an IB Continuum school. You don't have teaching experience or a teaching qualification. In that case, I mean, we'd want to review it and we'd have a look at sort of what the overall picture looks like. But I think we're prepared to make exceptions when they make sense. If you have been a leader in an IB school, you're already going to have a high level of familiarity. So my guess is you're probably going to be a good candidate for this. It's a unique profile. It's not common to become a leader in a school without the teaching qualification and the leadership experience, but it's not impossible, clearly. And so again, we'd want to review yours, but in your case, I think it looks like you probably are going to have the kinds of, again, looking at that metric, are you equipped to engage in this program and know how to complete assignments and be a good sort of colleague in the program, and what will it be like for others? I think the program integrity and the experience for you could be a positive one, but we'll have a look at your application to be sure.
Okay.
Any other questions?
If there's no other question on this, I'd like to ask regarding the qualification that comes after this, which is the Advanced Certificate in Leadership Research. At the moment, that is not offered at Western, right?
That is correct.
Is that something that you might be thinking of developing? Just to see what it is. There's a continuity in the process here.
Yeah, we have talked about it. We have not launched it yet. I think one of the things that we want to be cautious about is just making sure that we have the institutional resources and commitment. And the program that we have is focused on this level. So we don't have any immediate plans. I think what I would say is we don't have any immediate plans. Don't expect this to be happening in the next few months. I'm not saying that we wouldn't launch into it, but we're really cautious about making sure that we have done a lot of due diligence before we would expand the program. And I guess not to be unfaithful to Western, but if it's something that you're looking for in the short term, once you've completed the IBEC in either teaching and learning or leadership practices, and you want to go to that research route, do have a look at whether there is another university that might offer it. There aren't many, I will say that, because as you say, it's called advanced for a reason. It really does, it's quite demanding, and it's demanding on a research level. And so that's something that you really need to think really carefully about. But for that reason, it isn't as commonly offered as the ones that are the teaching and learning and leadership practices.
Thank you for that.
We have another question in the chat box, Glenn, and this is a great one. I get this one quite often. Does it make sense to take the IB leadership course without having taken the IB teaching and learning course?
I'd say it depends on your specific circumstances and whether or not you have, the short answer is yes, you can. You do not have to have taken the IB teacher course before you take the leadership course, but you do want to have a really solid set of teaching experiences. And if you are poised to step into a leadership role and time is one of the critical variables, then you can dive right into the leadership course. It's not a given, it's not a prerequisite. You are more equipped if you've taken the teaching and learning certificate, but it isn't a requirement. And I think that's one of the things that we're happy to sort of guide and to engage with you in what makes most sense for you. And I would say it really sort of depends on how promptly or quickly you may be embarking on that IB leadership in your own professional journey.
There's another one in here. Can my spouse enroll in teaching and learning program in India? She has 9 years of CBSE school teaching with central teaching eligibility test qualifications. If yes, then what is the admission procedure in India into the listed institution?
Yeah, I think if I understand your question, she would have met the criteria. Now, again, I'll answer on behalf of Western because that's all that we have any kind of really control over. So you can enroll in the Western program from India because it's an online program. It's meant to be open to candidates from around the world. We can't speak for what might happen in any other institutions that might be offering it. We're really we are offering an IB program, but we are Western University, and it's only the Western University program that we're responsible for. But you can certainly apply to our program from India and complete it from anywhere in the world. And yes, if you've been a CBSE school teacher with central teacher eligibility, then you would qualify for the teaching and learning program. Courtney, anything else to add to that?
No, that sounds great to me. Yeah, it sounds like you meet the criteria with the CBS e-teaching and learning. So we would just need to see undergraduate transcripts, your letter of employment is what I'm looking for within your application. And yeah, everything that Glenn said is spot on. Any other questions today?
One more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once the 26 weeks, right, program is done, is there anything else that needs to be done from our part other than paying that fee for IB and you inform them that we've completed the program? And then after that, is there a duration until actually receiving the certificate?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've successfully completed the program in all 4 modules, Western does send a graduate enrollment table directly to the IB organization with the list of all of those who have graduated. Once they receive that table, they will email you directly with a link to register. You'll go through their registration process, pay that fee. Once the registration fee has been paid, they will send your certificate directly to you. So Western doesn't actually provide any transcripts or qualifications. It's actually coming directly from the IB organization. I will say it's based on their timeline, which depending on the time of year, but it typically takes a couple of weeks, I would say roughly, from the past ones that we've sent in to register and get your certificate. It also depends on where they're shipping it to in the world. I believe they have a hard copy and a PDF copy if you request. And then once you receive that certificate, that's the end of the program from us. We do, at the end of your program, provide you different resources and places where you can go to sort of take a look for opportunities and that sort of stuff. But yeah, once you get that certificate in hand, you're good to go.
Thanks.
Hi, Rebecca. I see. Good for you. That sounds cool. You're making a move to Holland, and the pause that you've had, or that your focus on both writing and being a mom is certainly not going to jeopardize your application. In fact, I think your plan is a fantastic one to sort of do a refresh on what's happened in the industry in the education space in the time since you completed your B.Ed from Western. But yeah, this is a perfect way to do that. It will thrust you into some really interesting conversations. It will give you a handle on what it means to be an IB school, and it will certainly make your application more attractive to schools in Holland.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up for today. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes in case you do think of something. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your day or morning or evening for joining us and learning a little bit more about our program. If you think of anything else afterwards, feel free to reach out by email. I'm happy to respond. And I'll also be sending out the slide deck and the webinar presentation. Hopefully tomorrow I'll just get that all set up for everybody. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
Bye, everybody. Thanks very much for your time, and all the best in your professional journeys.
Thank you so much to you both for the session.
You're most welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Can you please repeat what the specialization process is for those enrolling in the PYP? Oh, with the PYP, we just ask that you select the age range you're most interested in learning about, whether it's the kindergarten to grade 2 or the grade 3 to grade 5. And that's mostly just for us in terms of where we're going to put you in the grouping. Because it's a large group, we typically have a lot more people in the PYP, but you will be certified at the end of the program PYP from kindergarten to grade 5. And you don't, like, we don't specialize specifically in the PYP, if that makes sense. We just want you to select one that you're most interested in just for groupings of our cohorts. You're welcome. Right. Hey, take care. Thank you, Glenn, once again.
You're most welcome.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.